All right, all you sheiks and shebas, grab your pearls, lace up your gladerags, and powder your noses, because we are zooming into the roaring 20s. This decade wasn't just roaring, it was a sockdogler of a time. We're talking fast cars, faster dancing, and even faster money. First things first, let's talk about the flappers. You know those old fashioned Victorian ladies? Yeah, their daughters looked at corsets and said, tell it to Sweeney. Flappers bobbed their hair, hiked up their hemlines, and painted their faces like a Picasso. These dames weren't just fashion statements, they were a whole movement. They drank giggle water, smoked in public, and danced the Charleston like their dogs were barking. That slang for feet hurting. But it wasn't just about cutting a rug. Flappers were also the cat's meow when it came to women's rights. Thanks to the 19th Amendment passed in 1920, women could finally vote, and honey, they weren't just going to sit around being a Miss Grundy or a killjoy. Now, let's talk about the real action, money. Because the 1920s were all about spending like there was no tomorrow. America was swelling with new tech and mass production, and suddenly everyone wanted the latest doodads and contraptions. Radios, refrigerators, electric washing machines. Oh, honey, America was in its add to cart era. And here's the kicker, you didn't even need the dough to buy these fancy gadgets. Enter buying on time. Now, instead of saving up, people could buy now and pay later with installment plans. You want that brand new Ford Model T? Just put a little money down and pay it over time. Need the latest radio to blast some Duke Ellington? Just charge it to your ledger. Sound familiar? Yeah, your great grandma was financing her phonograph the same way you're financing that iPhone. This whole spend now, worry later energy had Americans living like dapper Dans and doll faces without thinking about the bill coming due. And where there were people getting the cash to pay for all this, the stock market, of course. Okay, so picture this. The stock market was the hottest joint in town, and everybody wanted in. Stocks were rising fast, and folks believed that the economy was on the up and up permanently. People weren't just investing, they were gambling. And the best part, they didn't even have to have the money to get into the action. Banks were practically begging folks to take out loans, saying, go ahead, buy stocks on the margin. That meant investors only had to pay a tiny percentage of the stock price up front. The rest, they'd pay later when the stock price inevitably went up. Spoiler alert, it did not go up forever. By the late 20s, everyone and their pet canary was throwing their life savings into the market. You had folks mortgaging their homes, borrowing cash from banks, and betting it all on stocks. The banks, the big shot businessmen, the little guy on the street. Everyone was living like a Rockefeller. But here's the rub. What goes up must come down, and honey, all that wild spending and risky stock market gambling was about to send the country into a tailspin. But we're not going to chew your ears off about that just yet, because honey, the stock market crash of 1929 deserves its own episode. And let's just say that all that buy now, pay later energy was about to hit a brick wall. All right, let's switch gears and talk about what really made the 1920s the bee's knees. The music, the art, and the people who made history. Welcome to the Harlem Renaissance. Harlem, New York was jumping with black artists, writers, and musicians who were changing the game. Writers like Langston Hughes and Zora Neale Hurston put black voices in the spotlight, while musicians like Duke Ellington, Louis Armstrong, and Bessie Smith turned jazz into a national obsession. And jazz, oh honey, jazz wasn't just music, it was a movement. It was fast, unpredictable, and a little bit scandalous. People called it the devil's music because, well, folks were shimmying and shaking like never before. And with the rise of radio and phonographs, suddenly you didn't need to go to a nightclub to hear the latest tunes. You could bring the hullabaloo home. Before jazz took over, music was all about stiff ballroom dances and three-piece suits. But once jazz hit, it was the bee's knees, the berries, and the cat's pajamas. People were loosening up, cutting rugs, and making sure every speakeasy had a phonograph blaring. Whether you were in New York, Chicago, or down south, jazz was everywhere, and America was never going to be the same. So, to wrap it up, The Roaring Twenties were a time of rebellion, new freedoms, wild spending, and cultural explosions. It was the era where women said, "We make our own rules." Folks spent like the bill would never come due, and jazz turned music into a whole new ballgame. But, honey, every good party has to end, and by 1929, all that easy money, fast spending, and risky stock speculation was about to come crashing down like a house of cards. But don't you worry your flapper clad self, we'll spill that tea in another episode. For now, let's just imagine we're in a speakeasy, sipping on some illegal giggle water, listening to Duke Ellington, and dancing like there's no tomorrow. Because in the 1920s, that's exactly what people did. Now, would you have been a flapper, a jazz musician, or a Model T driving stock market gambler? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more history tea. Bye!